Okay, we send it.
I'm actively raising hand. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our digital opening of the Common Room Part 2. I'm very excited to see you that I can see and to have your digital presence of the one that I cannot see yet. I'm very excited for your participatory in the discussion and question later. Just shortly to talk about the rules of this webinar, we will start with the introduction of our team from our side. If you would have a question during our talk, please type it in a chat or just simply write it down on paper for later. And then once we are ready with our story or description and our guests would give us feedback, then you can also raise your hands and we can unmute you in any time to hear you. A sociologist based in Warsaw, Jacek Walawender, an educator based in Warsaw, Ola Müller, she has background in graphics, also based in Warsaw, Mariusz Grabarski with background in art, based in Warsaw, Bilal Alame, architect based in Vienna. I would like to greet the guests that I hear, that I'm really happy of your presence. Justyna Szpejro-Kajte, a co-founder of Improper Walls, a curator, and Lea Fruliser, the video artist based in Switzerland. And Lea had a special part because she also knows the project, I will talk in a short, Common Room Part 1. My name is Joanna Zabielska. I'm an urbanist and an artist, and I'm based somewhere in between Vienna and Warsaw. And I'm initiator of this project and also of the Common Room Part 1. That was an inspiration for Part 2 to happen. So that's why I would like to tell you shortly about the first project, so you can understand the ideas we had behind. For this, I will share my screen so you can also see it visually. Okay, I hope you have already first pictures. And the Common Room Part 1 took place in 2018 in the framework of the first edition of Tbilisi Biennial. The topic was buildings are not enough. This was having this very simple idea behind, to bring a private space of the flat into the public. So the idea was to get to know the floor plans in the Gildani districts where it was placed, and try to ground outside in the public space this kind of a platform that would open up a dialogue about neighborhood, about inhabitants' needs, thoughts, ideas. It was about to create a safe space where you can simply talk about your feelings, your emotions connected to the neighborhood, but also a more spatial topics, connection to the urban aspects and the architecture. And it was a kind of an experiment. We really were looking forward for the encounters with people and the space. And this idea, we continued into the common room part 2, but there were many differences, but as well many things in common. So, of course, the cooperation with Biennial, Tbilisi Architecture Biennale, is a very common point. This year's topic is what do we have in common? And on this aspect, we wanted to focus in this installation as well. And the project implementation in both cases was very different, though, because the first project in Gildani, we had completely different role as well. I came as a pure outsider. I could not speak the language. I didn't know Georgian. My Russian is rather fake and very poor. It was, though, a very intense and concentrated moment of work, because I was 2 weeks constantly there. Marysia, Jacek also joined me, and Lea. And we were, in a way, homeless. We were very present, but we didn't have this kind of safe space refugee where we could escape from the site. That's why it was quite intense process, but we could make a great contact with the neighborhood. And with the environment. And because of the role that we were already from the outside perspective, my aim visually from the installation was to merge into the environment. So my aim was actually to create an object that you would have to think twice if it is a part of the environment or it was newly created. And this was also connected with the background of this project, this general concept. We were working a lot with recycled materials. The material was already predefined. Those were these red pipes that are also very often in neighborhood. And because of these aspects, we created an installation that was having more permanent implementation. And the position and role of us in Służewiec was very different, as we are all or mostly all from Warsaw. We had the safe space that we could escape. So we were not purely outsiders. We can speak the language. So we are outsiders, in my case, from the neighborhood, but not from the city and country itself. That's why, as well, the aims were quite different. I was not aiming anymore in creating an installation that could be unnoticed. I wanted to make a visual statement. We also had a budget this time in comparison to last time, and that brought us more possibilities considering materials and implementation. And as well, the two spaces, I will stop my screen sharing so we can come back to the views of ours. And also the spaces are having a lot in common, Gildani and Służewiec, but also quite a lot of differences. And about this, I would like to invite Marysia to talk, because she is very connected with Służewiec, and I simply pass the voice to you so you can lead us into more details of the space.
Yep. So I work daily in the Cultural Center in Warsaw, in this district where the project took place. So we already know some of the neighbors a bit, but also we for us it's first step because the cultural center changed the location a bit, so it's the first steps outside for the institution as well. The area we worked in is quite interesting because it's called prototype housing settlement. And those are really prototypes. They were built in the 60s, 50s, and the 60s, but majority in the 60s. And they were built as houses for workers of factories, which was located in Służewiec. It was called Industrial Służewiec. There were 3 big factories and some smaller ones. The big one was the electrical one. the tram factory, and radio ceramic factory. So they employed a lot of people, and the housing settlement there was built quite quickly. So it was even called like emergency settlement, so that the factory directors could call quickly and bring people in case of any troubles. And unlike Gildani, this district is like each building is very different. There were around 20 projects, and they were trying out these prefabricated methods of building. So there were blocks of flats from 3 up to 10. In the late 60s, they were building majority 10 floor blocks of flats, so the bigger ones. And some of those ones were built somewhere else later on, but majority not. So they are like really unique, single time made blocks, which is quite interesting. So because of that, we couldn't find as like typical floor plan, but we had to ask people around, and there is one drawing of one lady, which probably we'll talk about later, which we used as a floor plan we worked on. Yes. So the prototype estate, the architects were also thinking a lot about the common spaces. There were schools built, the kindergarten, playgrounds. The common space was important at the beginning, but then after the transformation in Poland, so in 1989, the factories were closed. And in this neighborhood, there is more and more big companies moving in and building big offices. This neighborhood is even called in Polish Mordor, which is like from the Lord of the Rings, because there's a lot of big office buildings and a lot of people in suits working around. And this housing area we worked in, it is somehow left from all those years. Not much changes. What changed is the ownership of the building, so they stopped to be the factories buildings, but some of them were used as a communal flat. Some of them were given to the inhabitants communities which were created. So because of that, the common spaces are also, some of them are quite neglected because there is no clear ownership who should take care of what. Yes, and as I said, majority of those buildings did not go out from the prototype stage, so they just stayed unique. And now the government, according to the city government, the level of joblessness in this area is quite big. So you have this housing area with a lot of people with some difficulties and a lot of somehow not clear ownership structures, and just next to it, this big office building areas. And that's where we worked. During the project, we had a lot of talks with the inhabitants of this area about the flats, about how they feel there. And it was very interesting, and we will talk about it also a bit later. But it seems that because of that, the housing area there stayed just in the prototype stage, because as far as we talked with people, a lot of them complained about the rooms, that some of them are just passing through rooms, there is not enough space, there is a bit dark inside the flat. So the primary idea of the architects was to check it and then change it, or rebuild or start to build more and more some of blocks of flats, but it seems nobody really checked what works, what not. And that would be just to introduce you a bit in the speech. And now we will show you also the movie from the project, so you could a bit feel the taste of the neighborhood. And I don't know if Valerie...
I will do the screen sharing, and Valerie, maybe you can use the YouTube link too.
A czy chciałby Pan zapisać może, o czym powinniśmy pamiętać? Proszę. Bo tutaj dużo osób pisze, tak jak pan czytał, o czym powinniśmy pamiętać. I czy jakiś pana głos może by można zapisać?
I słusznie, bo to nam jest w życiu potrzebne. To nie dla jednej osoby, nie dla, ale społecznie dla wszystkich. Oczywiście, że tak. I to co stawiacie, to dobrze stawiajcie, pokazujcie, że coś chcecie, że coś powinniśmy, że pamiętamy, że żyjemy jeszcze.
I co, no dobra, i co jeszcze słychać u was w mieszkaniach, dziewczyny?
Oprócz tego, że mam kota, miałam psa. Kot mi miał, czyli pies szczeka na kota. Ja ogólnie nie znam sąsiadów.
Mi się podoba, co Blanka powiedziała o przedpokoju, że to jest najbardziej wspólna przestrzeń.
No tak, no bo wszyscy tam ustawiają buty, kurtki, no to... Mama, a co tutaj jest?
No nie wiem,
tutaj,
mamy kuchnię tutaj.
tutaj się napisz, o czym powinniśmy pamiętać.
A w ogóle lubisz kuchnię jako pomieszczenie? A co w kuchni jest najfajniejszego?
Jedzenie.
Jedzenie, okej. Ale sam gotujesz też, czy samo jedzenie jego?
Gotuję czasami, pomagam mamie.
A jakbyś miała powiedzieć jakiś taki najbardziej twój kącik w domu, to jest jaki?
Właśnie no mój pokój, no tak myślę, że...
Tam się możesz zaszyć. A najbardziej wspólne miejsce?
No to myślę, że... To właśnie myślę, że salon, tak.
Tam, gdzie twoja mama. Czy kuchnia?
No kuchnia no też, no tam...
Ale takie miejsce, co się tam spotykacie. Co byś powiedziała, że jest właśnie najbardziej wspólną przestrzenią?
No to myślę, że najbardziej duży pokój.
Tutaj nie wiem, czy panie wiedzą, że to są wszystko te budynki, to są prototypy, każdy trochę inny i to były takie eksperymenty i chciano po prostu budować dalej.
Bloki, proszę powiedzieć, mieszkania, tu mieszkam 50 lat.
Ale lubią panie swoje mieszkania?
I powiem, czy ja mam inne wyjście, tak chciałam, zadecydowałam i już i chwalę.
No tak, ale dobrze się pani czuje w tej przestrzeni?
25 metrów,
Ciężko.
dobrze
co?
się czuję, proszę pani. Sama to się dobrze czuję.
Innego wyjścia nie ma i pan powiedzieć, że
Dlatego ja się śmieję.
A pani młoda,
Ja się
trochę
śmieję.
Właśnie się chcę dowiedzieć,
Ale to się robi wszystko dla dzieci, żeby im było lepiej.
Aha.
A ja sama,
a
no
my to już
trudno.
niedługo z tego świata.
Ale nie, ja się jeszcze nie spieszę. Wczoraj nie, przedwczoraj tu szłam, nie było. Co to takiego stworzone?
Jeszcze będzie parę dni. Do widzenia.
Czy lubisz swoje mieszkanie?
Bardzo lubię.
A za co lubisz tak w ogóle?
Dlatego, że po pierwsze jest fajna przestrzeń.
To tak, a powiedz jeszcze nam, że w ogóle właśnie u was w mieszkaniu, która przestrzeń jest taka najbardziej wspólna?
Najbardziej wspólna to właśnie salon. Najczęściej, kiedy jest 19, to wszyscy idziemy pooglądać fakty, potem wyłączamy telewizor, ponownie go włączamy, no i oglądamy coś razem, no i jest fajnie.
Ja nie narzekam, mam bardzo fajnych sąsiadów, z góry, z dołu jest cisza, spokój, także nie zamieniłabym, może mieszkanie samo niekoniecznie, ale lokalizacja i sąsiedzi to jest bardzo dużo i też bym nie zamieniła, bo tu jest okolica super, tak jak widać, tylko żeby nam tego jakoś tak nie popsuli, bo mają zamiar coś wykombinować, ale tu jest naprawdę fajnie. No mieszkania są różne, tu niewielkie, małe, ale wie pan, no mówię, są ciche, są cieplutkie, cieplutkie, tak wygląda, no teraz ocieplili, to nie, ale taka, tam pod spodem to jest taka okrywida, ale naprawdę są cieplutkie, dziury tam były takie aż pary kiedyś, teraz to powymieniane, zawsze było ciepło. To są, cokolwiek, to są bunkry, nie mieszkania, także jest to wszystko tak solidnie ulane, PRL po PRL, ale solidny. Budynek jak budynek, w bloku są te mieszkania wszystkie podobne do siebie. No. Jeden ma 3 pokoje, drugi ma 2 pokoje, jedne są przejściowe, drugie są środkowe, jedne mają północ-południe, jedne południe okna i wschód-zachód. No i tym się to różni w zasadzie. Metraże są no, takie 50, 48, 37, 42, więc mniej więcej takie metraże. Akurat tu w tych budynkach są, więc tak to wygląda. I nie chciałabym zamienić. Bo mi się pytają, bo ja mam możliwość zamienienia na inne mieszkanie, ale powiedziałam, że nie, tu jest za dobrze. Za dobrze, za cicho, za spokojnie. To jest naprawdę super sprawa.
Ja kiedy zawsze się budzę, to jest dokładnie tak samo.
No
Budzę
tak,
się jedynie, co słyszę,
słuchaj.
to tylko coś w domu.
Tak, jest tak samo, bo to życie na tym polega, że jak chodzisz do szkoły, to przykaźnie jest, no nauka zmienia cię, ale też siedzisz prawie w tych samych ławkach. Pójdziesz do pracy, no to co robimy? Prawie to samo, dzień w dzień to samo. Wychodzisz jak się mieszka, no to co? Praktycznie prawie, że jest to samo, no więc tak na tym to polega.
In the original file. That's why we put a link on the YouTube, so you can still watch it in the better quality. And now I pass voice to Bilal.
Hi. So hi everyone. I will share some notes and some ideas about the construction and the architecture and the concept behind the design. So in common room number 2, I think it was very important for us to maintain the same essence of the original project. But in this case, as Joanna previously mentioned, one aspect we wanted to really focus on is making sure that the object that we introduced into the neighborhood did not actually blend into the surrounding environment, but rather stood out. So the main idea was to recreate the floor plan of a typical apartment in Służewiec, and based on that, place it in the common space around the housing blocks and see what kind of interaction it would cause. But since we were unable to find one single typology, basically, that would be representative of the entire housing block, we relied on a few sketches. So Marisha was having conversations with representatives from the local housing association, where we tried to obtain some floor plans. And at the end, we were unable to, and we asked her to draw what is a typical floor plan. And she drew a few floor plans for us. And we found actually at the end, working with a hand-drawn sketch of a floor plan much more poetic than working with an actual printed out plan. Because you can see the influence and the influence that the spaces inside had on the people themselves. So I don't know if you've looked at the sketches on Facebook, the main logo of the floor plan is the actual sketch from the local housing representative. So if you can tell when you first look at it, it's a bit unrealistic. It has this, this slight hint of absurdity, because the rooms have weird dimensions, or weird is a wrong word, because I guess unfamiliar dimensions, because you rarely find a bathroom as equal size as a kitchen or as a bedroom. And the living room is slightly larger than the rest. And we have the entrance to the apartment obscenely large, you know? So when we looked at it, we said, but this is not logical. How can we recreate such a typical floor plan? Because it's not really a representative. But at the end, when you look at it and when you really think about it, people draw and sketch intuitively based on importance of certain spaces for them in apartment or at home. So maybe the person who drew the sketch felt very much safe, or felt that a large portion of the bathroom represented them. So subconsciously, they awarded that space the same level of importance as a bedroom or as a kitchen. So we decided at the end to work with this floor plan and try to recreate it. But because of the limitations that we had from COVID, we were unable to fully execute the entire floor plan of the apartment. So the initial idea was to create each room separately and then ceremonially combine all the rooms into one bigger flat. But since that was not able to happen due to the limitations, we said, okay, anyways, most of the rooms have almost the same dimension and the same size. So we're gonna build one module, and this module is gonna be mobile, and it's gonna move around within the neighborhood in specific spots that we choose, and it will transform. So it will have a ritual act to it, and it will be a transformative act. As for the construction itself, we decided to go with a very simple wooden frame construction. That was on purpose because we wanted, the wooden frame was meant to draw out attention and attract the residents. But at the same time, it was not supposed to obscure vision. So it was supposed to allow the background to always remain in the conversation. So by placing this foreign object into the playground or into the park, it would draw attention because it becomes foreign immediately. But at the same time, because it's a frame, it allows the background to remain as part of the conversation. So that was for us a very important, because we did not create a voice or contain physically, but it would contain but not exclude. So we added, besides that, a few architectural elements or household elements, so to speak, that would play a role into shielding or unshielding, covering, uncovering. So for example, the bathroom had for us a shower curtain, and the shower curtain was placed in such a way that you could uncover and cover, reveal, unreveal. And this would interact as well with a mirror. The mirror was symbolic for the reflections that we have. So when you look in a mirror, what do you see? What are your thoughts? What does it insinuate? Do you see the background as well? Or do you see purely yourself? When you close the curtain behind it, does that change your vision? So these small elements within this frame would create the dynamics and induce certain interactions and conversations. So yes, that is basically conceptually what we aim to do. It was also for us very clear, I guess I speak for myself and for Joanna as well, because we were mostly dealing with this topic of design and how do we construct it and how do we go about it? Do we want it to blend in? Do we want it to stand out? And for us, we thought very clearly that we would like for this element to stand out, but also in such a way that we would treat the neighborhood the same way we would treat any other neighborhood. So if I were to do this installation in Vienna, I would go about the same approach. I will not alter the design purely to fit certain aesthetics, because I think it's also part of a respect that you have as an architect or an artist, because whatever you design, it should be the best that you would like to offer. So in a way, for us, it was a respectful gesture to give something, an object that we considered well executed, beautifully put. It will stand out or it will not stand out, but this is ultimately up for the inhabitants to decide. But we treated it as the same way we would do Vienna, as the same way we'd do, let's say, Paris, Beirut, any other city. So we would not want to differentiate and change our design in that concept. Yeah. And I would like to now maybe pass the talk to Jacek. He will talk a little bit more about the rituals, the symbolisms, more how it all went about and the activities in the neighborhood on site.
Okay, hi, so I'm taking the voice now. Okay, we've started with bathroom as the first room. And, you know, with all the rooms, we're thinking what that room means to us and what it could mean also to the other people. Because, for example, for me, bathroom, you know, for the first view, it's like the place to defecate, but it's much more. I mean, all the rooms are much more. And for example, bathroom is also the place where you're alone, where it's private, but also it's private, but everybody who's going into your house can go to the toilet, or even in the COVID time, it's like they're going there to wash their hands. And if they're not doing that, you can be a little bit afraid sometimes because they don't do that. And we've got also a lot of common toilets, like toilet in school, for example, where I don't know how it's in other countries, but in Poland, a lot of kids are smoking some cigarettes and doing some secret also things in that place. And that's the place when you can think alone. And I think you're the only judge for your thoughts in that. And of course, we cannot bring everything from the toilet to that toilet, that bathroom that we built. So we decided to put there two elements. I mean, the first one was shower curtain to make some privacy there also, and to connect that with bathroom, and also a mirror in which we put a question, what do you see? And that question can go to yourself, or you can ask about also your neighbor and environment there, because people were also talking about, oh, there was a fountain here, oh, there's a lot of dirt, for example. And the thing that was the kind of hard, it was to make that the people won't destroy that, because everybody was saying to us, oh, the people are gonna destroy that. So at the start, one of the most important things, I guess, was building that outside with the people, because a lot of neighbors help us with that. And on the first days, we've got a lot of contact with local people who drink a lot of alcohol every day and every day. And I guess it was, yes, it was good at last, because when they accepted us, then it was safer. And there's also in installations like that, there's a problem to not, that a lot of groups are trying to take off place like that. For example, if that people will go there, then kids won't go there, then some other people won't go there. So that's the problem we're dealing during all the time. But it's true, they really help with that building. Of course, one time they stole something, then they give it back. There was like fun like that. And after a bathroom, we built another room, or even rebuild that, because there was a lot of rebuilding, and people also can see that. And I think also that's important, because when people can see that you're making some physical work, even if they don't know what's the point of that, then they can respect that. So after the bathroom, we built a kitchen. A kitchen is the place where you can eat, but we cannot eat outside in COVID or do the cooking with the people. But the kitchen is also the place where you can talk more privately with some smaller group. I think more honest than in living room, for example, and with the other. And we put on the installation some fridges, and on those fridges we put a question: what should we remember about? Because also in the kitchen, you're sometimes writing on the fridge what somebody should remember about. And in the kitchen, there was more interactions than in bathrooms. I think it's good also. And people were sometimes talking with each other. For example, one time somebody say, oh, we should remember about patriotism. And somebody else said, yes, about patriotism, but not patriotism like one of, like our government is making of that. So there was some discussion there, and there are COVID times. So also people can discuss without seeing each other, because somebody can put a paper there, and somebody can go and walk there later, read that, think about that, or write something else. Even on some papers, there was like somebody wrote something, and later somebody else wrote something on the same paper, like making some dialogue. And that was the second room. So now the third room, and the third room was the bedroom. And the bedroom is also a specific space, because like in a toilet you're alone, and you can say toilet is more private. But for example, I'm letting in everybody to the toilet in my apartment, but to the bedroom it's like my private. I like to keep that close, and because that's the place where you can, I don't know, it's like the place when you're very close to somebody. It's also the place where you can sometimes are alone or with the second person. Or also, could be connected with depression, or when you really don't have any power, then you're laying on your bed and thinking about something or about anything. So we put their question, what do you do when you do nothing? And that was the question there. And some people even write something down there, but it was for some time, it was more like to read that and lay down, not only to, write it. But we understand from the talks with the people that we shouldn't live for a long time bedroom alone. Because when we are talking them about about the flats and apartments, they say, usually on that neighborhood, they don't have like bathroom, kitchen, bedroom, and living room, but they are mixing. Like living room is usually connected with bedroom. So just for a little bit of period, we put there a living room. So the space where a lot of people can go, they can talk. It's also the place that you're showing to the others. Like if you've got like picture, usually put that in your living room. But we connected then living room and bedroom with more of the living room, because that's how it is in that neighborhood. And I think that installation should go into the conversation and dialogue with the people, because if we won't do that, then we're having a monologue. And if that's changing because what talks we have with the people, then it's dialogue. And even if that's, look symbolic, even because it's always will be symbolic, like their apartments, then it's easier to make their thoughts like, whoa, it's really something. It is a bedroom or living room, but it's outside, and talk with the other people how it's in my apartment. And in a living room, in some point, we put a lot of questions like, but the main question there was, about what houses are you dreaming of? And some people were making drawings, some were writings. So it was also a little bit about, because it was connected to bedroom, so it was like some of bedroom, some of living room in there. And in some point, we also in some way give that place to the kids. And that's another group who always want to take off some space. But it's risky, but it's also good for some time, because some of the kids, for example, bring tea for us, then somebody else brings some cups for everybody, they make pillows from something, and they were really like, person who are living there. And it was for a moment, and we're afraid like now it's gonna be only for kids, but it didn't happen, I guess. For that time, it was really for the kids, but it's also about, making something common and something that you make some space which is outside, more private. So it's good when they are changing that a little bit for themselves. And I think I'm of the time, I guess so. So I'm gonna pass my voice. Now I'm passing that to the Ola M.
Okay, so okay, I will improvise. I would like to, at that point, say something about the process itself, because during that project we had some quite peculiar situation where the group of people who were creating and planning the project had to separate. So Asia and Bilal had to stay in Austria. Maria and Jacek had to continue the work by themselves in Warsaw. Then I jumped into the process just before the realization, not knowing actually much. So it was a very interesting actually experience. And which actually I think that what can be interesting is how the idea was had to be kind of changed by the by the reality and people during the project, as it was evolving constantly. It's like we had to build all that buildings, like not really being because maybe at start I should say that there was no agreement, like 100% agreement is or like as like sorry for the cows, but like two groups had different approach, like what is more important, like the social work or the project from as like architecture project. That's why I think we were not really sure what to do. Like in fact, like okay, what's the most important? It's that like to observe how the idea was evolving, because once we were like starting the work, having some idea and trying to make the sense of it, like how to, for example, interpret the form, because Bilal just said that his idea behind the architectural project, like he as creator, he knows the meaning behind the form, etc. For me, it was super fresh, so I was kind of reader of it. Then during the work, it was quite lost. So, and when we were being here from the bottom, it was not sure anymore if this idea will work or not. So there was a moment when we were in our work when we were really trying to make sense out of it, out of form, etc. We were discussing a lot of this, but then like the work with people became more important than everything. Like what I mean is that essentially is that the actual contact with people dominated the project, so it started to really live its own life, and the form also started to live its own life. It was I think like I'm very confused. I'm sorry for chaos, but like it's so much information during that weekend. Very huge context in this project, so it's like I don't even know how to start the whole point.
I think I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to hook on that you really talk about very important aspects, because the process was quite complicated, of course, due to the external factors. And this kind of questions that are question marks for you in your head, because you had this role of like jumping in, being on this edge of participant, observer, and so on. I think it could be very interesting to put this kind of questions or aspects into the part of discussion. For this, I would like to invite Leah to talk first, if you don't mind, Leah, and like shortly present yourself. And I think as well, Leah had very unique role, because actually was invited to join the Common Room Part 2 project. Unfortunately, the COVID was making it all unclear, and we decided last minute with broken heart to not go for it, because the Switzerland has quite tough rules, and this commuting there and back international project was not as easy, as we noticed as well while being based in Vienna. But you have, Lea, like this perspective of a participant of the first project, and you also knew how process was there. You had also a very unique role of being like one hand observer, on the other hand taking part in activities, and you also had to make a decision and show at the end what's visible on the videos, what's not. What is actually a very powerful thing, because at the end what most of people get from the project when they're not on site is documentation. So simply I would like to pass you the voice to share your feedback, critical thoughts, any questions, but begin definitely with short introduction of yourself, please.
Okay. Hi everyone. You hear me, yes? Okay, great. So I will shortly present myself, a bit short my work, and then my connection to the Common Room 1, and then I will share a few thoughts that I had now during your presentation, points that I consider as interesting, and a few questions. So my name is Lea Fröhlicher. I'm an artist, filmmaker, and art and culture mediator. My artistic work increasingly deals with subjects like modes of acting, how to do things, phenomena of daily routines, unofficial knowledge, and relations to people and between them also influence my projects, which are process-oriented also and often span over a long period of time. And so film and video are also my like tools that I use a lot. Maybe during your presentation of the Common Room 2, I can add that this summer I was also doing a project over 3 months that have some connections, because one of my latest projects is an installation intervention also in public space in a city. And with this installation and actions, I called to mind the social function of a fountain, namely the fountain as a meeting place and a place of exchange. And next to this fountain, a fully furnished living room was created with access 24/7, which was used by a wide variety of people for over 3 months. So it was also quite interesting to see some parallels with Common Room 2. Yeah, in 2018, I met Joanna in Yerevan in Armenia, where she stayed for a short artist in residency. And then in end of October the same year, she invited me to be part in her installation Common Room 1 that she presented in the beginning of her speech at Tbilisi in Gildani. And yeah, I stayed a few days there and was part of this great project. My role oscillated between documenting with the video camera and being there as a participant, as Joanna already mentioned. So now I will share a few thoughts with you that came to my mind when I heard the presentation. So I think that's great that this installation Common Room Part 2 is so really open, kind of, not only in the construction, not only in the architecture, but also in itself as a concept. So it leaves a lot of room for thoughts, for ideas, for participation. The artists gave this certain frame, but it is as open that still a lot of things can change, can happen spontaneous, or will be adopted, or can grow with the time. And you were also forced with this special situation of COVID really to adopt the project. So I think a project is really good if it has this flexibility, that it can also change. And that the Common Room installation took place during COVID times, where home office is common and life is increasingly taking place at home. Yeah, this gives for sure also the whole idea an additional weight, kind of. Because, so I will say this installation is very very current in itself, also in this time. Then also interesting is, I think, that housing topics, even housing problems, were discussed with the participants, as you said. And yeah, it's great that through this project, a lot of these discussions came out, also about the flats, about the conditions. So I think then I consider this common room project, I mean, with that knowledge that I have now about it, as quite sustainable, I would say. So it's something that is really connected to the people, to their situation, and their neighborhood was involved, and it was not just a fake involving, I think. So as I consider from your presentation, they could really also get in the project at some point, more or less. Because, and I think this is also happening because it has to do with them, so they have something to connect. So the residents of the area, it is connected to their actual life, to their own life situations, their own life circumstances, to their memories. So it's not an alien thing, I would say, kind of. Yeah, and then for my questions, or I don't know if you want to add something, Joanna, or...
Thank you a lot for your feedback. It's very interesting, and it was actually very inspiring for me to follow your project Stube. I also followed it digitally. I had no chance to see it. And I found this so kind of fascinating how simple this concept is of bringing like this living space into public space, and how often it is used by the artist. Like you came to this idea completely independently to us, and I also researched there are so many projects in the same direction, but all of these outcomes are still unique because these projects are so like site related and people related that they produce very different state of knowledge at the end. So this was my only comment. I would have a lot of questions to your project, but as you back the voice, go on.
Yeah, for one of questions I have, or I would be interested if it was a goal of your project or not, is as I learned among the visitors of the installation, there are mainly residents from the neighborhood. So it was in this area, and the people who took part, except of the organizers and helpers, were residents. So, which in itself is great because the installation is practically in front of their doors and also meant for and with them. So now I would like to ask the question, what would it be like, the installation, the concept, if a mixing, also a social one, would or could take place in this frame? For example, residents from the quarter and in the and the same time, people that are interested in the project or that came aware of it, people from Warsaw, maybe more from the center, tourists, I don't know. So how could this be achieved, or would it be not at all a goal, and what would change if there would be a mixing, or isn't it a good idea at all? So this came just to my mind as a first question.
Discussion. I have one idea, like to go smooth. We noticed down the question, and it's great. It's a lot to talk about. Now I would like to move shortly to Justina to give her a chance to feedback and comment, and then we will talk about both questions together at the end. So we have time to digest it and think and answer properly. And if you don't mind, Justina, then I push the conversation towards your direction. I'm also very, very happy that you are here with your different perspectives, but also this perspective on being at the end at the edge of East and West, as you banally saying, come from East, live in West. So I pass the voice towards your direction.
Hi, I'm very, very honored and happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I guess I'm the only one totally unrelated to the artwork and not being part, so I'm giving my thought like kind of like from outside. Shortly about myself, I live and work in Vienna. Almost 7 years ago, I started to work in art and culture field by co-founding an art space. Now we call ourselves a cultural platform. We also put lots of focus on community-based work and reflecting or showcasing art which has which works on socio-political issues. I think that's enough about me, but I'd like to talk, express some thoughts on artwork. As Joanna already said, yes, I'm coming from East and live in West, and actually I grew up in housing block, a bit newer than this one. You worked now in Warsaw, but I think they all, most of them were built in the same kind of construct, so that it's for community. It's actually for communities to live, where you have all the things needed for communities to thrive and share experiences at one place. So like, and also some common spaces as leisure activities, or playgrounds for children, libraries, and so on. And then suddenly growing up, I have always to think with this open door from our neighbors and running around and going to this neighbor and that neighbor. From one day from another, we closed the doors, we locked everything, we started to untrust everyone around us, and even maybe not saying hi sometimes. And I think now it's a time where like this like a feeling of the community, understanding that how it's important is coming back. But as it was easy in one day to close the door, to open it again, it takes much more effort. That's why public art and arts related, like talking about the social issues, I find extremely crucial and important. What else I wanted to, one very interesting thing I was keep thinking about communities living in similar housings. I know that now they kind of started to be more connected through the social media, that they have some common online spaces where they share, like if they, I don't know, buy something, sell something, someone needs help. So that's also maybe straight one of my questions is like, do you know if the thing exists there in this neighborhood, and if people open this like discussion in their online communication, like what's happening around, what I think, is it on my way, how do I experience it? So that's for later for you to answer. Another thing I noticed, what I found very saddening, I think when the neighborhood neighbors were saying that why do you build it? Because it will be stolen or destroyed. It's the community you cannot trust. And it made me also think that it's kind of like, you know, already like a few generations hearing it constantly is unsafe, it's untrustful, everyone will, someone will steal that, or this cannot. So it's kind of this like frozen in time, like feeling, and also not giving opportunity, a chance for young generation, for maybe to imagine another kind of the community, or another kind of like a different area they live in. And yeah, so this is like this neglect. This idea from the community to neglect that it can, this kind of artworks or initiatives in their neighborhood can bring some change. I found it very saddening, and I think it's one of the common problems which we need to address, and especially I feel like artists, because what you experience, that nothing was actually destroyed or stolen, because I think the trust from artists to the community members was huger and more significant, because we need to understand that people also, they know it's art, they interested, the curiosity connects them, and also curiosity, maybe somehow, I don't know like how to express it, but somehow reduces this neglecting feeling or some kind of aggression towards, as you also like named it, some alien object in their neighborhood. Also, one thought I had, I thought about that you brought this like frame of the based on the floor plan of the apartment, actual apartment in a public space, but you kind of stripped it down. So there are just like some like symbolic objects representing a living room or bathroom or kitchen, but it's open. It's so transparent. It's like totally naked, which is very. When you think about the flats and our living spaces, we very much keep it closed. Like, of course, like we invite people, but that's not for so many people to see. We are not trying to like invite too many people to our houses. We like this privacy. And at the same time, people interacting with the installation, they also use the bed, they sat down somewhere. So they also were kind of like exposed in the body language, the same they used at home when no one is watching them. So I found it very interesting, because it's just like something like stripping down everything what hides us from each other and having it open in public. Yeah, I think that will be it from my side.
Thank you so much. It was a very inspiring feedback as well, and a lot of like thoughts you spoke about that I would love to relate. I would though pass voice to Marysia and Jacek to answer first question of Lea, and then I will allow myself to get the voice back and comment on some issues that you spoke about.
Okay, so starting from the Justina's question, if it comes to the virtual space and if people have contact, as far as we talked, yes, and also during the project there were a lot of little topics coming out. For example, the fountain, which is similar to the one Lea was mentioning, that it used to be there, but now it's not, and so on. So we, just to investigate a bit more, we found the local groups on Facebook, and we started to ask people if they remember the fountain and if it was there, and there was a big discussion. So just basing on that, because I don't know much, but I think there is a virtual community around the neighborhood still. I don't know how many people have access to it, but the discussion was quite hot, because some people were saying, yes, it was there. The other ones were saying, no, it was a few meters further away, and so on and so on. And if it comes to the Lea's question, and also it's a bit connected with what Justina was saying, I think it was, okay, for me, from my perspective, it was important that it was happening slowly, and that we were just 3 of us building, then there were some neighbors joining in, and this was for me very important, that it was happening slowly and somehow regularly every few days, so people could adjust. And then at some point there was also this weird moment when we were building, and people, we had a feeling people treat us as background already, but it was a nice feeling that they are somehow they got adjusted. So I think if there would be more people from the city center or from another districts or tourists coming in, it would be more difficult, because the group, there would be 2 groups, and in this way we were like just few people and slowly getting more and more help, and also people got more, this was my feeling, more intimate with the object, so they were writing more, and then and then they started to write down, even if there was no question, no direct question, they were already putting some answers. So that was for us searching for a way to communicate with them in the COVID times when there is not so much, because sometimes, for example, also when we were approaching them, people were stepping back because just to keep the distance. So there was, we somehow with Ola and with Jacek, we had a lot of this, and with Asia and Bilal, who were all the time present, but were not there. We were trying to find some way of making the communication without the direct communication. So it was all the time searching. And I think it was important that it was not many of us, or not a big group of people coming in, just like...
Yes, and also about inviting people, for example, from all the city there. I think it would be bad for this project because when local people were talking, they can say like, oh, I'm living in that house and I'm living in conditions like that. And it's, one of the, I think, most important thing was there was few dialogues between those people about flats they're living. And this is the same situation. And if somebody from another part of the city will come, he will be like, tourist who is listening also, they're living in houses like that, I live in another house. I think it would be bad for this. Even we feel a little bit strange because we're living in better conditions, for example, than a lot of those people. So it's like, even us are like...
not maybe better, but just different blocks of flats.
Okay, maybe yes, different.
Not, because this was also the thing about this prototypes that, for example, we were talking and suddenly it turned out that two people have the same floor plans, and then they realized they are from the same building. So, and also yes, we discovered, because we were trying to document the project, so we discovered how much talking about flat is intimate. And for me, it was this discovery. I didn't realize that it's that much, that you, that speaking about your space, you really speak a lot about your families. And very often we felt there are some things we cannot document directly because they are really personal things. So, and I think this like publicity from outside would stop this kind of, or in my feeling, it would stop this kind of interactions. I don't know if you, Ashu and Bilal, want to add, or Ola, if you want to add something.
I would really like to add something, because I also understand why Lea asked this question very well, because it was in my personal definition of a successfulness of a project, it was this point in Common Room Part 1. The case was that people also from the other district of Tbilisi came to Gildani, the people that actually were feeling quite some prejudice or fear maybe about being there, because it has a kind of bad stereotype behind it. And I remember this one situation that was at the opening of the Common Room Part 1. I was lucky to get big support of volunteers that were architecture students that were definitely coming from wealthy families living rather in a city center, and they joined a lot my project, and they really involved much. They were helping me to build the furniture. They were like the ones running the events, translating all the time. And then there were also like some local gangs of boys running around Gildani. They were kind of observing, sometimes making fun of us, sometimes joining. When you had to drill, they would come, so the girl don't have to do it, etc. So they were also there present. And for me, it was very inspiring that these two groups met, because most likely they would never meet under any other circumstances. They met, and at the end, during this event, it was this very symbolic moment for me, that they were singing on the opening. Someone organized guitar, some guys came, someone was playing something from cell phone, and there was this like very spontaneous concert where the girls from architecture, they were singing the traditional Georgian songs, and also the boys were singing then after, or they were partly mixing or singing together. And this was for me important. It was my personal success of the project. But it's true that this was not the case of Common Room Part 2. And I guess as well, because of the COVID conditions, maybe it was very hard like to expose people to meeting others. So even these others from further away than their neighborhood was quite more tricky, I think. Mm-hmm. You want to add something, Bilal?
Well, I wanted to say, yeah, it's very
interesting because it's also a very sensitive topic to touch upon. When I grew up in Beirut, so I grew up in a neighborhood that was a bit marginalized and excluded. So you always have this echo chambers of negativity that that is unfortunately very stereotypical that comes from the people of the city itself. So you have people telling you, don't go there, that neighborhood's not good, it's bad, it's very dangerous. And coming from such a neighborhood, for me, I grew up there, it was very safe, I felt always quite okay. So that is actually something that I in the future can imagine, bringing common room into a much wider platform and combining these people to create this dialogue and to create this segregation. Because of course it's important to start off in a slightly more intimate, because when you move from a very intimate space to a very exposed space very quickly, it can induce some anxiety. So as Marisha and Jacek said, you can feel a bit uncomfortable sharing your apartment or information about your apartment to somebody who may not relate. But I think at some point, this transformation, or not the Übergang, this
hybridization, no?
No, this development from this ultra private to this exposed is a delicate subject, I think, but it is very important because it breaks stereotypes and helps certain areas stop being so segregated. Because also one aspect is this aspect of frozen in time, this feeling, it's because I think sometimes we underestimate also people from certain areas. We say, they will not understand this is art, this is all very abstract to them, this is not what relates to their problems. But I think this is what I touched upon earlier, in the sense that we did not want to alter our initial concept. We treat it the same way as we would treat somewhere in Vienna, because people should and will be able to relate. And if not, they will ask, and then they will be curious, and it will cause or induce some train of thought. And this is ultimately what we wanted, because this project, it is not an intervention per se, because we do not have a solution to all the social problems, to the unemployment problems that are there, inequality. We don't have an answer to how to fix that. But what we have is an opportunity to bring those issues from the private sphere. So when we complain to our mother or our brothers and sisters at home in the private space, we can maybe bring some of those issues to the public space. And it can be okay to say, yeah, let's talk about it. Like, how do we feel? How do these spaces make us feel? Why is this neighborhood so not well maintained? It's because we also at some point, because we feel so neglected and segregated by others, we also start to do that onto ourselves, because ultimately the neighborhood becomes another layer. So same as your clothes are the most intimate layer towards you, your apartment is the second most intimate layer. But then your neighborhood is also the third most intimate layer. So all of that is a reflection on how we feel. So yeah, how you take care of it is ultimately how you feel about yourself. So all of this is what we wanted to accomplish by just instigating these ideas and thoughts.
I would jump in with more pragmatic idea. All the thoughts that were spoken are extremely interesting, and I even could talk still for half an hour to still spoke about some issues that you all raised up. But we still have our last 15 minutes of the discussion. So I would propose to answer the voices and questions from the audience attendance. I don't see any questions in the chat, but maybe you would like to raise your hand. In case there is nothing coming, then I think we have enough still things to jump in. I see Lea, you are also putting your hand up. Let's just give this short moment for the...
No, it was for before. I just had something to add. I think it was answered, but maybe one thing about the first questions that that you answered. It was about the online, the social media, and I was then thinking you had this social online Facebook page where you also talked directly to participants. But I would be interested if the neighbors, people from the area, if they really got to this Facebook page Common Room Part 2, or if it was just like a documenting tool, or it would be wishful that they saw it, but if they visited this Facebook page or not.
I see just one question from Dominika, so I will let her talk and then we answer both together. Thanks. Dominika, I hope you can talk.
Can you hear me?
I unmuted you. Yes.
Okay, so I just have one question comparing the Common Room Part 1 and 2. Maybe you spoke about it, but I still don't understand fully why in this first part you decided to take objects from the neighborhood and make the installation out of it. And in the second one, it's this wooden construction, which kind of stands out, because to me it would make the space more cozy and more maybe welcoming to the neighborhood of Służewiec. And it would also show some continuity. Do you know what I mean in this part? What's the point?
I'm not sure if I understood the second part. In the terms of the wooden construction, yes, that is true. I heard that from a few people, in the sense that this looks like a foreign object that doesn't belong there. It's very stripped down. But that is something that we insisted on pushing, because we wanted to provide, first of all, we wanted it to be a new structure. So that means we did not want to recycle materials, because often this feeling of coziness is by using old recycled elements, which is great, ecological and very sustainable. But it is nice when you get this, it's always for us this reminiscent feeling of when you get a new piece of clothing or something that is fresh and new. And for us, it was important because we thought this neighborhood is deserving, at least from my point of view. I see it as this neighborhood is deserving of something new and specifically constructed for this neighborhood, and not rather used different elements that would give a feeling of coziness, but not necessarily be this freshness. But also, by being new, it would also draw attention. So it would be foreign, and this also creates a bit more attention to it. Rather than if you see, for example, an couch sitting there, you might assume that somebody left it there, which is something that we don't want people to think, that somebody is leaving furniture that they don't need and leaving them in the courtyard.
Okay.
As for the first part, I didn't quite get that. So if you could repeat that question, would be great.
No, I think it was mostly about this part.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will jump in with one comment that is actually maybe not an answer for your question. Bila answered it very well, but it's more comment to what Justina said about the trust issues and like this trust toward neighborhood and how it can happen if the installation will be destroyed or not. I think it's very interesting somehow my emotional approach to this installation. I must say that in Georgia, in Gildani, I was hearing constantly that why you do anything, it will be destroyed. But somehow it didn't touch me that personally. I was in a way seeing already, well, I'm an outsider. Of course, I put some effort and work and energy, but I understand the reasons why, if it would get even vandalized. And as the structure that we're building was very strong, it was like this metal pipes, I trusted that at least till the opening it will be there. If someone will destroy it after, okay. Somehow I accepted it as a part of the game. At the end, I wanted to give this sign of trust to the neighborhood and leave all the furniture that we created on site. So those vanished, of course. Then the people that I made friends with from the neighborhood, they were like sending me on Facebook sorry messages that they were like, I'm sorry, I was taking a look on it, but still this vanished, this neighborhood. And then we visited also 1 year after the installation, and yes, true, some parts were missing, so even the metal parts got stolen. Nevertheless, still it didn't touch me personally. But with this installation, the one that we're building in Służew, I don't know what happened with me. I was super overprotective, like with my baby. I was constantly telling Jacek and Marysia, please, please, but make it happen so it will not be destroyed. Somehow I had the twist in my mindset. I took it super personal, and I really wanted like to be proof that it can stay there, that people at the end will give this trust, maybe as well because Marysia is more part of the community. So I really hope that that I had higher expectations toward neighborhood, I must say. I didn't expect it from Gildanie, as I knew I'm such an outsider, then I step in and step out. But this time I really hoped in the social process behind, and I think if the installation would have been damaged, in the meantime, I could get like personally hurt. And I'm really happy that at the end it's still staying. It's still like the weekend that is the, the proper weekend now, because we left it without being there, without attendance. So I hope on Sunday it's still there. We see.
For me, actually, I see it as, I saw it as if it's okay if it got damaged and destroyed, because it is an interaction as well coming from people living there. I think my reaction would have been, okay, it got destroyed, let's fix it, because I think this is step one. When you neglect and you start to abandon and not care, then generally you develop this feeling about yourself. So when you show that somebody cares and you destroyed it, it's okay, I fixed it the next day. They will destroy again, you will fix again, and this will go on. But I think it's an important ritual or interaction between the fixer and the vandalizer, because at some point, hopefully, the vandalizer will realize, okay, this is of some importance to someone. Maybe I will stop doing that, or maybe they will get tired. I don't know, but it's very interesting, I think.
Are there any other questions from the audience?
Or maybe somebody would like to comment on that as well?
You?
The issues of vandalism, or...
I saw very interesting in a chat message from Nessa. I already said, I said thank you for it. There is also one more message. Apart of vandalism issue, how would you compare overall experience in Poland and in Georgia?
That's for you.
For me, or maybe even more for Jacek and Marysia, because my experience in Georgia was quite intense, as I was very much there on site. And in Poland, like it's a little bit answering your comment, Lea. My heart was breaking. The Facebook, never before I made so much effort in social medias, because I was always on site. And this time, as I was like locked at home, observing all the videos and messages and voice clips or photos from Marysia and Jacek, I simply like spam social media like crazy, because these were at the end like this kind of experiences that I was getting from the project. So for me, it was very sad not to be there on site and very intense in the process as I would wish. That's why I think the experience from Polish side is limited for me. And I already decided for myself that generally I would like to make it again, third edition, to be there on site. But maybe Jacek, Marysia, you could comment on this more, because you were on site in both cases.
Yeah, so for me, I can start. Yeah.
You can start.
The second one was much different because of this difficult situation that we had, which Ola also was talking a bit about, but it was also super interesting because we had, with Ola and Jacek, we were discussing a lot how to, about the form and about the need, and then we were trying to pass it to Asia and Bila, so we were discussing together, but it was all like, not that, it was not like the experience of each of us was somehow not direct in a way. So it was difficult situation. And in Georgia also there was not, because I really think it would look different if not COVID. So we really had to try to find a form, in the COVID time to make it common room and not, and to somehow try to relate to this experience in Georgia where people really went into the installation and were doing something there. So this was for me the basic difference.
Okay, so a few others basic difference for me was, the language and being homeless, because in Georgia we're homeless, mean we don't have our flat and we don't know the place. And here we were in, working with the cultural center, we know the city, we're living here, Marysia and Mariusz are working there. So it was much different in the language, because in Georgia, even the small gestures or, talking everybody in some different languages, that was the communication. And here you can use our language with another people. And it was like, I feel that we can, talk more deep with people, but it was hard. I think we haven't managed that in some levels, because it's like different things what you can get. And I think it was possible to get somehow deeper to that because of the language. Even that those gestures were more than, I think, or equal like in Georgia, that we have also language here, not only gestures or stuff like that. So that was one of the main difference for me, I guess. And also, one of the ideas that in Georgia, that was something what also Dominika were asking, and that Bill was telling, that in Georgia it was like building common place where everybody, so it was like anybody will bring anything that was good, and we're like inviting for that. Here it was like playing that we want somehow that structure to stand like it was, and somehow also people to change it a little bit. So it was both of that at some time in some point. So it was also different, because it was also important to look that aesthetically and not change everything in that. But somehow when you're talking to people, it also, some of the work of making that, it's also during the talk with people and then maybe changing with them. So it was like game two of those needs. I guess that's, I don't know.
And there also, we discovered this difference, or we felt more this difference in being somehow homeless on Sunday when the cultural center was closed, and we were really cold being in this installation. And then people really suddenly, somebody brought us tea, somebody was helping with some other things and cups. So it's really, then the situation became a bit more like in Georgia, where there was a lot of people taking care, but still there were similar moments, like with the bringing the carpets. So somebody was bringing something. Just also there was then the question of how to put it in the installation. Yes, but so on some points it was similar, but on many it was very different experience. Also because of the space, because when in Georgia we recreated somehow the whole flat. There was more space, and now we had one room somehow. So during the COVID, it's difficult to really invite people in, because it's not enough space for them to be at one point all together.
And if I can, one more thing, that it was like this construction was changing 4 times to being another room. So that was a big difference, because in Georgia it was building, and it was building more and more and more. And here the point was, we are building, then we are changing that. Building, changing, building, changing. So that's like a big difference. Even with contact with the people also, because if something you can, for example, building from zero, from A to Z, from start to the end, then they can put something and you can put something else. And now it was like, we'll put something, but then we're gonna take it off and then build something new to transform this construction to another room. So those are the, I think, main things. And we've got also somebody else with a question, so maybe we should stop talking.
We are unfortunately running out of time.
So we can answer maybe that question.
So we will answer the last question, if there is any appearing.
Somebody raised their hand.
Yes. I allow to talk.
Hello.
Janek, you can
Yes.
be heard.
Yeah.
Ah, cool.
Yeah.
Hey.
Just a little question on the reactions of the people there. You talked a little bit about this, that they get used to you during the period you were around, but did you receive, did they take it naturally as something artistic, or did they pose questions on the artistic character of what you're doing? So how did they treat it on this level? Is it art or not? What sort of thing is going on here? That would be the
very nice question. I will say like 2 sentences how it was in Georgia and then pass you on the voice. I had a feeling that in Georgia we played the card of being absurd. Like me with my super poor Russian, I was telling to people who are asking what are you doing that I'm inviting to them to my home because I don't have home here, I'm homeless, so this is basically my home. And the funny thing is that they immediately stepped into the game. They were not like really questioning. They were like, invite me in home. Okay, cool. So show me around, like in which room I am. And then the other guy was like, okay, I'm in the kitchen, but where is, this obrus, like the what you put on the textile you put on the table. So he brought it like next day, and they immediately like really stepped into the game. And because of the language barrier, I don't think they could really go on this level of the questioning the concept. And I think they had like more playful approach to it. They were like really entertained by us, by this weird aliens. And whereas I could imagine that in Służewiec, it was quite different.
I can start, but Ola and Jacek just break in if you want to break in. Somehow, I don't think people took it abstractly. So at the beginning they were surprised, and as Jacek was saying, they were often telling us that it will get broken for sure and soon, and don't leave it for the night and so on. So it was a lot of this kind of things. And somehow, they were, when there were mirrors, for example, they were going into the situation of reflecting themselves in the mirror, but somehow I had the feeling that they needed these hooks to go into interaction with the installation. So there was a fridges on which they could post post-its. There were questions, and yes, and then at some point, somehow at least this was my feeling, it became like a part of the background. So there was, with Ola and Jacek, we were building, and there was one lady passing and just asking, what is today the living room? And we said, so this was this kind of interactions after a while. I don't know if Ola, you...
But on the other hand, Marysia, you also mentioned to us, at least from the talks, that some people were questioning existence of this. Like they were kind of, as the art is supposed to be on the top of this pyramid of needs, some people were, I think, asking this, okay, why to spend money on this?
There were voices like that there was, for example, a lady saying like, why to spend money on something like this when there are bigger needs in the neighborhood? And she is also right. So it was somehow the pretext for conversations about the needs.
Yes, but also on the one hand, her needs are not always voiced. So there had to be a pretext or a context that she would feel free to say, well, I have more important needs than now a structure that lays in the middle of the playground. Yeah, but on the other hand, this dialogue would not have existed without the structure, and her needs would not have been voiced and maybe documented in the short film. Or so this is important also for, I think, but yeah, it shows that sometimes when you have more important life needs or existential needs, for example, food, and unemployment, these problems, that they don't dominate mostly our day-to-day existence. And that's the luxury that Western countries have, is that they are, in this sense, well taken care of by their government or by the society, that they have time to allow themselves to think of these or non-existential problems, as in talking in public space, or
or there was, I'm just thinking more that there was also a neighbor who was helping us to build it. And I don't know how he treated it. I think he was a bit surprised, but he just said to somebody else that he cannot go to meet this person because he's doing interesting things. So this was like a thing.
You don't know how to name it, so it's interesting thing.
It's interesting because it's different. Sorry, yes?
I don't know.
It's. I think this quote from this man is the greatest answer to this question.
I really like all your feedbacks, questions. Unfortunately, I'm just seeing that our discussion comes to an end. So heartbroken, I have to cut it. Really, thanks once again for the guests that you took time to prepare, to feedback, to share your thoughts. Of course, big thanks to anyone who joined the discussion on Saturday evening. I find it challenging. Good that lockdown keeps us in front of computers. Biggest thanks, of course, for the whole members of the team. And I'm really happy to tell you that it's still another event coming. If your energy still will allow it, tomorrow we have a symposium. Symposium will not go strictly about our project. We wanted to separate these two, and it will be more like talk with experts from multidisciplinary fields that do similar work to us on different scales, from the city planning in city of Warsaw to this scale of art installation in public space. So if you are interested, there is still one more possibility to go deeper in the thoughts. And for now, I really thank you a lot. And it was very meaningful possibility of reflection for us, in my opinion. So, cool.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
And if some of you gonna have some another questions, you can write to us about the question about this installation. You can ask about answer you later.
We can answer as well on Facebook or here. Yes, we take definitely time for it. Cool.
Thank you.